It's time to experience the O on the original Sports Podcast. Here's your host, Mark Maradei.
He shoots and scores. Our guest this week on the Original Sports Podcast with Mark Maradei is bringing some serious hockey knowledge to the show. David Amber is a Canadian anchor for Sportsnet as a host and reporter. He's best known for his time doing NHL On the Fly on the NHL Network and is the anchor for Gate 5 Live, Raptors Pregame, and Raptors Post Up on NBA TV Canada. He'd been an anchor and reporter for the ESPN and its family of networks. Amber joined NHL Network prior to the 2010-11 NHL season as host of NHL Tonight, and he brings a wealth of experience to the job. Amber also serves as co-host for the network's coverage at the NHL signature events and their exclusive programming. We're going to talk with David about the current NHL season and his thoughts on some of the up-and-coming teams and players. We'll discuss his views on each of the conferences and who may be a sneaky surprise team in the 2022 Stanley Cup Playoffs. For our We Just Gotta Know segment, we will have David share his favorite cities to cover and watch some hockey in. I want to welcome our guest today, David Amber. It's an honor and privilege to be talking to one of hockey's brilliant minds out there. And I know he covers the Raptors and does some Raptors stuff as well, but we're going to talk some hockey today with David. So David, how's the world treating you today?
It's great. It's great to be alongside you, Mark. Thanks for having me here.
I appreciate your time. Hey man, what got you into hockey? Did you play, or is it just something that fascinated you? Tell us about that a little bit.
Well, I was a fan before I played. So growing up in Toronto, the Mecca of hockey,
Yeah.
I grew up in the 70s. So the Leafs, it was exciting. Daryl Sittler, Lanny McDonald, Boreas Almy, Mike Palmateer. It was exciting to be a Leafs fan when I was a little guy. And obviously the Islanders kind of broke their heart one year. And then every other year after that, it seemed like Montreal Canadiens broke their hearts. They were a good team, but they were never good enough. And that seems to still be somewhat something that haunts the Leafs a little bit. But so I was a fan growing up, and I always wanted to play. And then finally, when I was about 9 years old, I was bugging my dad so much. He's like, "Yeah, okay, we're going to get you equipment. We're going to play." And I loved it. I played, I still actually play in a beer league. So I'm even as a grown man, I'm still playing hockey. Love it. I just, I think it's fast, it's physical. The guys to deal with now that I'm sort of on the journalistic side of things, Mark, they're great guys to deal with generally. The fan bases are so passionate about the game that it just makes it a real joy to be part of the NHL community and the hockey community in general.
Absolutely love hockey players. They are true gentlemen of professional sports. I got to be honest with you. Back in the day, when I was a lot younger, I used to get autographs and stuff. And one bad experience, and we won't get into that, but just about every guy, anybody from Lemieux to Gretzky, those guys are always so fantastic. And I truly understand where you're coming from with that.
Absolutely.
I appreciate you sharing that. Actually, Toronto is probably my second favorite team, to be quite honest with you. I can't diversify away from my Penguins, but I do like the Maple Leafs. I hope they have a good run, but not at the expense of the Pens.
You know what? The Penguins are having a great year this year. And I think it surprised many people, myself included. I wasn't sure how the team was going to go, Mark. I looked at the team, and on paper, whenever you have Crosby, whenever you have Malkin and Letang, you have a shot.
Yeah.
But I just didn't know. I didn't know how the goaltending was going to work out. I didn't know if they were sort of one of those teams that's like got a foot in the pool, but not fully immersed. Like, are they going for it? Are they, trying to figure out their rebuild? And I think just the things fell into place. Without Crosby, without Malkin to start the season, the fact that they got some traction, Mike Sullivan's done such a good job. They play in a system. They work hard, regardless of who's in, who's out, who's injured, whatever. And once they survived without Crosby and Malkin, I went, wow, okay, this could be a team to keep an eye on. And then they've just been getting better and better, more consistent. And I don't know what's going to happen to them come playoff time, but I can tell you no team is going to have an easy road taking on the Pittsburgh Penguins come playoff time. So it's really a great story. And if that's a model franchise, I mean, that is, right, what, 15, 16 straight playoff
16.
appearances, the Stanley Cups.
Yeah.
You know, they are sort of the gold standard for NHL franchises. And yes, they've had some luck. You go from Lemieux and Yager to Crosby and Malkin, but they've also surrounded those players with guys who know how to win and with a structure, a stability that's really lent itself to success. So it's been really fun to watch. And I'm sure every other NHL franchise has sort of looked at Pittsburgh as that example of like, how can we run our franchise? Like, this is what we're striving for. Consistent playoff caliber team, consistent Stanley Cup contender. It's been really cool to watch.
And I think you hit the nail on the head too. I think Mike Sullivan is just a perfect fit for a coach for that organization. They seem to all have a very cohesive existence there. From my perspective, as a diehard for many, many years, my jury's kind of still out a little bit on Hextall and Berkey. I want to see what they're going to do with this team come this off season when, you know, Letang and Malkin and Brian Rust and you know, even the new guy, Reichel, is going to be free agent. How are they going to manifest that to keep things chugging ahead? But, you know, as long as you got Sid lacing them up and on the ice, there's going to be some competition for that team. So, you know,
your window's there once you have a guy like Crosby. And those are some big decisions for Ron Hextall and Brian Burke to make. And I think Brian Burke, when he decided to leave Sportsnet and head back to the NHL and head back to the Penguins, I think he's always made it clear he takes time assessing. He doesn't just go in there and knee jerk. Everything's measured, right? So I think he wanted to see how the team performed. I'm sure Ron Hextall wanted to see how the team performed. And if they didn't perform up to the level, you know, if they've been right on that precipice, right? If they've been on that cut line of making the playoffs, maybe they've gone in a different direction. Maybe they wouldn't have gone out and added a Ricard Raquel, right? But I think they've seen enough from this team and they have enough belief in this team to say, we owe it to the players, we owe it to the fan base, we owe it to the ownership group to make a legitimate run this year. And we'll see what happens, right? As Brian Burke always says, he says, I check my notes. And you know what? They still only hand out one Stanley Cup. So, you know, you can make it all the way to the Stanley Cup final and it's still going to be viewed as an unsuccessful year unless you're the ones raising the cup at the end of the year. And then you have to make some hard decisions, but they're good decisions to make, whether, you know, how many teams would love to have the opportunity to try and re-sign Evgeny Malkin, re-sign Chris Letang. I mean, these aren't bad decisions to have to make.
And those guys are still playing at a really high level.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's, you know, I mean, Letang is quietly having a Norris Trophy type of season again. You know, I mean, I got to appreciate that. And then one other thing, and then we'll move on. But, you know, the selling of the team was very calculated, in my opinion. Like, they sold it to an organization who's going to come in and continue with not rebuilding from the ground up, but kind of reloading. And I think that's really important to the people in Pittsburgh from that perspective. Like you said, they got Lemieux, they had Yager, you know, and you had guys like Francis and all those guys come through. And then you just kind of had a small lull period. But then, you know, the Crosby, the Malkin, the Letang, it's fun. It's fun to be a fan of that organization.
Yeah, listen, you guys are spoiled. I mean, let's face facts, right? How many hockey fans in their mid-age basically can say, well, I've seen not one, not two, not three, but 5 Stanley Cups, essentially, right? 5 Stanley Cups in a since 1990 to now. Listen, it's a long amount of time, but to have 5 championships. I mean, how many teams since 1990 have won 5 titles?
Right.
I don't know the answer to that, but my guess is it might just be the Pittsburgh Penguins, right? Or am I forgetting someone?
No, I don't think so. I really don't think so.
Either.
Chicago came close.
Chicago's had 3, right?
Yeah, in the Kings as well. You know,
Kings have had 2, but I mean 5. When you include the Yager Lemieux era, I mean, you're talking about 5 championships and incredible runs to the final. Not all of them have ended up with championships, but
and Tampa has 3.
Yeah, you know, and a competitive team. Exactly, Tampa has 3. A competitive team with superstars to watch. You know, some of it's been lottery luck, 1984 Lemieux, and then getting Crosby and Malkin and Fleury for that matter. I mean, you talk to fans in Buffalo and they'll say, you know, damn you, Pittsburgh, because, you know, they finished last in the league a handful of times. And instead of getting McDavid and Ekblad, you know, they got great players, but they didn't get McDavid and Ekblad, right?
Yeah.
You know, so sometimes some of it's luck, but a lot of it is, as you say, an ownership group that's been very smart with how they've handled things, and a leadership group on the management side that have done, very many good things and have added the right pieces at the right time, have made the right coaching decisions at the right time, whether it was bringing in Dan Bilesma when they did, whether it was bringing in Mike Sullivan when they did, these mid-season changes that have led to Stanley Cups. Not every team pulls the right string at the right time.
No.
And now Fenway Sports probably saw all of that and said, we want to be part of this. I like how they run things. And this that's a great hockey city, right? Like they're devout hockey fans there. I know it's always going to be Steelers. I see the Roethlisberger shirt. It's always going to be a Steeler town, but the Penguins are right there. It's a good sports town.
The fortunate piece we have too is we kind of roll right from Penguin season to Steelers season because the Pirates, they're the Pirates.
So I love that park though. I like PNC.
Yeah, it's a top 5 baseball parks in the country, in baseball. So, hey, let's roll through the league a little bit. Let's get some takes from you. Let's start out west. I do want to start out west. I want to ask you what's going on with Edmonton. I mean, does McDavid and Draisaitl last a career together there?
They're still in their mid-20s there. I mean, who knows? Who knows if we're going to see a Crosby Malkin type situation, a Backstrom OV type situation, a Sakic type situation where, they're there their whole career. Who knows, right? There's just so many different variables, but I think they're trending in the right direction. Obviously the coaching change helped maybe stabilize things. They've added the addition of Evander Kane has been helpful.
I was going to say that. Yeah.
The team rode how McDavid and Draisaitl took them. And clearly that's still probably a big part of the narrative. But if you look what they've now surrounded them with, like adding Zach Hyman was a great addition, right? Yeah. Adding Evander Kane was a good addition for them. I think it's taken some of the heat off those two, and those two are absolutely phenomenal. And the beauty of it is instead of having to play them, let's say 23 or 24 minutes, they I think were 1 and 2 on ice time for forwards last season. And go into a bit of a malaise, maybe you play them 21 minutes. And in a game like last night where you have you beat Anaheim 6-1, you don't have to play them more than 18 minutes. And that makes a big difference come playoff time, come down the stretch. So there's such a fantastic duo to watch, though. It's pretty spectacular, and they've been pretty lucky. We talk about the fortunes of Pittsburgh, Mark. Well, Edmonton fans have been pretty blessed after all the Gretzky and Messier era. Now you've got McDavid and Draisaitl.
Yeah, and then you've got to throw in Nugent Hopkins, and Darnell Nurse is a heck of a defenseman. I mean, they really have some pieces there. I totally agree with you, and I love the fact that they gave Kane another shot. And I know he's got some off ice issues, but man, I've always been a fan of his game, particularly. He's a big, strong, good skating, goal-scoring guy. So it's good for him, too, as long as he keeps his head on straight when he walks away from the rink.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, how many power forwards are there in the game that have the skill set of an Evander Kane? And quite frankly, the returns have been exceptional. 16 goals in 31 games. He opens up space. He gets to the net. If you've watched their games, most of his goals come within about a 5-foot radius of the net. A lot of guys don't want to be in that space. That's hard space to be in, but they've got him, they've got Hyman, they've got Puljujarvi, who are big, strong guys, unafraid. It really opens up ice, opens up space for their other, sort of white collar players to do their thing. So, the questions with Edmonton will never be about the offense, though. Really, it's about how can they defend, how can they keep the puck out of their net, and do they have the goaltending? And that's going to be the big question, because come playoff time, if you look at the Western Conference, you got Marc-Andre Fleury and Talbot now in Mini. You got Markstrom doing his thing in Calgary. Kemper's been very solid in Colorado. Now the question is, can Koskinen, can Smith, and if they have to go to Stuart Skinner, can that trio keep Edmonton afloat when it's not a 5-3 game, a 5-4 game, but it's a 2-1 game. So that's a big question coming into the playoffs.
Yeah. I mean, you look at the last time they were in it, they lost to Winnipeg, 4 straight?
I mean, 3 of those games were in OT, but you're right. Their offense dried up a little bit. They went up against Connor Hellebuck, and there's way less space. There's fewer power play opportunities, and that so much of their success has been predicated on their special teams. You have to beat teams 5-on-5. And if they find a way to somehow neutralize 97 and 29, it's going to call on other guys. But more importantly, again, I don't think scoring is the number one issue with them. It's how they defend, how much, they can keep the puck out of their end and out of their net. So I don't think they need exceptional world-class goaltending, but they need to have at least above average goaltending. And that's the big question. Can they get that?
200-foot game for the rest of them, though, right?
Absolutely.
Let's talk about Vegas real quick. Did they miss Gerard Gallant? Because I watch Vegas. I like to watch late night hockey, but they don't have that, I don't know, that certain je ne sais quoi like they had under Gallant. What are your thoughts on that?
You know what, Mark? I think you touched on something. One thing I'll say about Vegas, and you're based out in Washington, and that Caps Vegas final. I had a chance to cover that final, and two great hockey markets there.
Yeah.
They had that identity in their first year. Us against the world. We're a bunch of misfits. Everyone cast us aside. Let us get taken in the expansion draft. Damn it, it's us against the world. We don't have any big superstars on this team. That was their identity. And then that was with Gerard Gallant, who played that perfectly. He got every ounce out of every guy that year, right? And that was who they were.
Yeah.
And then, guys wanted to get paid, and they wanted to bring in, whether it's Eichel, Pacioretty, Pietrangelo. And listen, those guys are stars. I would be making those guys the moves to get those guys in too. And they bring in Peter DeBoer, who's, DeBoer's a great coach. He's led two,
absolutely.
3 teams to the Stanley Cup final. His resume is exceptional. But I wonder about the team's overall identity. I do wonder, so who are they now, right? You have a $10 million guy in Eichel, and you have some other very high paid guys. And because of that, you have to have, some guys who are making the league minimum, and it's got to work out. It's got to work out perfectly. It's like puzzle pieces falling into place. The fact that Mark Stone's out right now, that's huge. I mean, this guy to me is a perennial Selke Award candidate, right? He plays, you talked about 200 feet.
Yeah.
He does everything. Wins faceoffs, kills penalties, plays power play, shuts down the other team's top player, scores big goals. So, he does everything on the list the way that Patrice Bergeron does. And they don't have him. And, not having him in the lineup, and they won't be able to have him, I don't think, based on the salary cap situation until the playoffs, and hopefully in the playoffs, if they make it there, that's a tough situation for them. So there are some question marks there. Robin Lehner, thankfully, is back from injury. But I do still wonder, there's something about Marc-Andre Fleury, and he's got this allure to him. And, I don't have to tell a Penguins fan that, right? And Robin Lehner is an exceptional goalie, but there's something about, they allow themselves to walk away from last year's Vezina winner, and a guy who's won 3 cups, and a guy who is, arguably the greatest teammate anyone could ever talk about.
Sure. And
I always wonder if you lose a little bit of your identity when you let guys like Fleury go, when you let Gerard Gallant go, when you make some of the moves that they've made. And you have these great individual parts. I'm just wondering if the whole, total of the Vegas Golden Knights is as good as they hope it is. That's something we're going to find out. They got 3 weeks to figure it out. They're going to need some work and need some help, because Dallas is nipping at their heels here. So it's a bit of a litmus test, but they're right now rolling in the right direction. 5 straight wins for them.
To me, missing Stone is probably in that locker room more than on that. I get what he does on the ice. Don't get me wrong. I totally understand that.
He's a captain.
But that locker room piece of him, is so critical.
True.
I don't know. How about Colorado? Here's a team I got to watch Saturday against my squad. And man, are they loaded with talent. They are just from top to bottom. Kel Marker. Wow. He's terrific.
Wow. The wow factor's there, Mark. I think you hit it on the head. And you saw them Saturday without Kadri, who's having a breakout year.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of money last year. Without their captain, Landeskog, who is out with a knee surgery. He'll be back for the playoffs, they say. So you saw them without 2 of their key players, and they still just, they come at you at ways. They come at you with skill. Their defensemen are both mobile and physical and smart. And Kemper, knock on wood, people have said, I wonder if Kemper's the guy. So far, so good. I'm just wondering, the question mark for them is psychologically, right? They've had this problem in the second round. Things haven't come together. We saw Vegas, take care of them last year. And the year before that, they've gone in as favorites. They're going to win a back-to-back President's Trophy, probably for the most points in the regular season. None of that matters. They are going to have to get through probably a very tough Minnesota team, a very tough and physical Calgary team. The road to the Stanley Cup Finals can be very difficult for the Colorado Avalanche. Do I think they're still probably the favorites? They're certainly one of the favorites for sure. But I'm wondering, psychologically, when push comes to shove, where they're going to stand up against some of these really formidable teams that, maybe feel they've been there and done that a little bit. And you know what the dream scenario might be from a hockey fan's perspective, Mark, might be if Vegas somehow can creep into the playoffs on this hot streak, first round against Colorado. Oh my goodness, that would be incredible. That would be incredible. And we might be staring that down.
Man, I'll tell you what, I was watching Colorado skate, and they not only are fast, but they're heavy and physical. The West is fast heavy and physical. And I don't feel like the East matches up real good with that, but we'll talk about that in a few minutes. You mentioned Calgary, you mentioned Minnesota, you mentioned Dallas. I'm going to say St. Louis. Who's got the best possible run there in the playoffs out of all them? Because Minnesota, man, woo, that team just.
And you talk about fast and physical, especially physical. I mean, Nashville is probably the most physical top to bottom lineup there is in the league. My God. I mean, they lead the league in penalty minutes. They lead the league in fighting majors. They are unafraid. And let's not forget about LA. Boy, do they play hard as well. So, I mean, there's a whole group of great teams in the Western Conference. If you were to ask me to pick one team, though, I am going to, and maybe it's my Hockey Night in Canada bias shining through here, but the Calgary Flames, I look at that team and I can't find a weakness. Markstrom is a world-class goalie.
Yeah.
Daryl Sutter, as their head coach, has won a couple of cups in LA. You talk about team toughness, top to bottom. Boy, they're unafraid, and they very much are comfortable playing that brand of hockey. And then I look at the depth they have, both on the blue line and up front. You know, the blue line, it's funny. They lost their captain, Mark Giordano, in the expansion draft, goes to Seattle. And there was a lot of concern. And then what do you have? You have, Shillington comes up and has this great career year. These guys, Rasmus Anderson is phenomenal. If you haven't had a chance to really keep a close eye on him, he is such a smart and tough player. Good Branson's been exceptional. Like they just have they have this group of guys that have just been so good defensively. And the problem with Calgary we've seen in previous playoff runs is everything's come down to Johnny Gaudreau and Sean Monahan offensively. It's just put too much pressure. It's too easy to game plan against just Johnny Gaudreau. That's not the case this year. First of all, he's having his career year. But above and beyond that, you look around him. They get Tyler Toffoli. They get Jarm Krok. They get Blake Coleman in the offseason. Lucic, he's a menace, right? Every game you're not going to see him do everything, but when he is on, he's still like the most feared player in the NHL in many respects, right? From that physical presence standpoint. They just have so many good offensive talented players now. Monahan's gone with the hip surgery. He's gone for the year, and they can still weather that storm. They have 6 20-goal scorers. Mangiapane, who comes off that world championship in the summer with Canada, has been exceptional. They just have a lot of layers of player. They have a guy who I think might win the Selke Award in Elias Lindholm. And I haven't even said Matthew Tkachuk's name yet, right? No. Like they have so many good weapons, and they play in a system they're very comfortable with. This team's made for playoff hockey. So if you're going to ask me to pick someone coming out of the West, even above and beyond Colorado, I might take Calgary, who's beaten Colorado twice this year already.
I think it's and you said about Sutter coaching them and about what he did in LA. Those teams that he has coached is a reflection of him as a player. I mean,
and you see that in football, right? Like you talk about when Bill Cowher was the head coach of the Steelers, right? And even Tomlin, like a team takes on the identity of its head coach quite often. We talked about Gerard Gallant, who has this kind of chip on the shoulder, but happy-go-lucky persona. And that was Vegas in 2018. And you look at Calgary in 2022, and it's just surly, aggravated, like get off my lawn attitude. And that comes from Daryl Sutter, right? Like he's a doesn't mess around, no nonsense guy. And the players, he doesn't suffer fools, and he doesn't suffer players who can't handle that. So he has this lineup that Brad Treliving has blessed them with that, really play into that system, and they have taken on his identity. And quite frankly, that's scary news when you think about the rest of the NHL. Daryl Sutter is, personifies sort of winning at whatever cost, and just, we're going to get it done. And I don't want to hear excuses. And I think the team said, okay, we're good with that. And that's why I think a big part of their success has come from that. So I think you're right. They take on the identity of their coaches, and we've seen that in Calgary this year.
Big shout out to you for giving Gabranson some love. I thought Gabranson always got he was in Florida, went to Pittsburgh, played well. They moved him on. I'm like, man, why are you moving on from a guy who's playing this well? He went out there. He's done well out there. Like the guy just needs a shot to play where he's most comfortable playing his game, and not try and make him play his game. Don't try and make him a top line pairing or something like that. That's not him. That's not what he is.
You know what? He was the perfect peg, right? Because, guys like Rasmus Anderson, Oliver Shillington, at times Noah Hannafin, they want to be up on the rush. They want to get involved. They want to be activated. But you have him, you have Chris Tanev, you have some other guys, Zadorov, who are very comfortable playing back. And having said that, he's picked his spots. I mean, I think he has a career high for goals. It's not a big career high, but I think he's got his Good Branson, that is, has his career, I think 5 or 6 goals this year. He's been able to pick his spots, and he's been able to play the role that he's meant to play. And maybe what's happened in the past is it's like, we need you for 21 minutes or 18 minutes, and we need you to play against the other team's top line. And you know, is he at that stage in his career? No. But slotted in where he's slotted in, and with the partners he's been playing with, it's been the perfect situation for him. And it's great to see that, because some of these blue collar guys, they get lost in the shuffle, they get forgotten. They're certainly unheralded. You know, you talk to the guys in the Calgary Flames dressing room, though, and they're going to point out the Milan Lucics. They're going to point out the Good Brances. They're going to point out the Chris Tanevs. These are the guys that allow them to do what they need to do. Give them the space, give them the time, give them the security. And it's very important. And he's been exceptional this year.
Those are the guys that win the Cup playoff games for you, too, to be honest with you. You know that, and I know that. There's no question about it. Hey, let's flip over to the East. Florida. By the time I drop this, which is probably going to be really early May, we'll be into the playoffs because we got the month of April to go. Is Florida for real?
I think so. I've had doubts during the season. I'm like, can they win this with his style? Do they have the right makeup? Do I trust the goaltending? And every time I start to doubt it, you know, they just start ringing off the checklist. I mean, no one's going to doubt they can score, right? They're going to be the first team since Pittsburgh in '96 to average 4 goals a game. Scoring's not an issue. Do I like their blue line? I love their blue line. I certainly love it a lot more with Aaron Ekblad. I mean, that injury to me was devastating.
Yeah.
Thank God, a day before or 2 days before, they went and got Ben Sherratt. And Sherratt isn't Ekblad. I'm not saying he is, but Sherratt is very good and very coveted. And we saw what he can do. We, you know, helped lead Montreal to the Stanley Cup final last year. So you have a guy who's playoff tested, big, strong, nasty when he has to be, very comfortable in that role. Ekblad's a big injury, though, and that does concern me. You know, high ankle sprain, whether he'll be back, and when he's back, how effective can he be? It's so hard to come off an injury and then get thrust into the Stanley Cup playoffs, right? Where it's not even one thing to come in and have a 5-game landing spot in the regular season, feel comfortable. Another thing to jump in mid-series or, you know, start of a playoff round like that. That's not easy. But yeah, their team fast. I think you might say, you know, kind of like Carolina, they just come at you in waves.
Yep.
They have so many options, right? You look at, you know, it's not just Barkov and Huberdeau. Huberdeau, by the way, might win the MVP, right? So
it would surprise me.
No, and I think he's deserving. He's certainly a finalist as far as I'm concerned. But then, you know, Duclair and Reinhart and Bennett, like they've just got a lot of different weapons, Hornquist, etc. I like the team. I really do. I think the biggest problem Florida might face is they're in a division with Tampa and Toronto, and let's not even forget about Boston. Like the road, there's no easy road to the Stanley Cup, let's face it, but that Atlantic division is incredibly skilled. It might not be as tough as the Western Conference, but you're gonna have a hard time, in my opinion, finding a more skilled top 4 than Boston, Toronto, Tampa, and Florida. Straight up, you know, offensive skill, you know, some exceptional players, world-class players, and that's going to be a tough road to have to plow through those teams to get through the East.
Yeah, I agree. Tampa, can they three-peat? I'm not going to be happy about it, but can they?
Absolutely. I mean, anyone who's like, okay, make the case that Tampa can't repeat. They're not going to be able to, because it's impossible. As we sit here, they have the best goaltender in Vasilevsky. Yeah. In my opinion, they still have the best defenseman in Hedman, and they have this great core of elite offensive talented players, and they brought in the likes of the Corey Perrys. They don't have exactly that third line that they had last year, but they've brought in guys who certainly have a resume. You know, the Patrick Maroon Stanley Cup seems to follow him wherever he goes, right? Yeah. So he's going for a 4-peat essentially right now. Yeah. But they also, I think, have a will to win. You know, John Cooper is great at motivating players, and we've talked about Gallant, we've talked about Daryl Sutter. You know, John Cooper is the longest tenured coach in the NHL for a reason, right? It's not just because he's won back-to-back Stanley Cups. It's because I think his voice resonates with players. You know, last year, he found a way to motivate them. You know, we want back-to-back. It's the last time this group's going to be together. Guys need to get paid. We got free agents. It's our last time together. It's our last hurrah. And that motivated and galvanized the group. And this year, he's like, okay, now we have a chance to make history. Now we have a chance to do something that hasn't been done in 40 years. right? You and I remember the Islanders in 80 to 83, how exceptional they were. Tampa can legitimately be a dynasty.
Yeah.
And right now they're a great team, but they're not a dynasty. They win a third in a row with the salary cap and everything else. At least to me, you can slap the dynasty tag on them. So he knows how to motivate the players. And, they're, to me, you asked me who the favorite in the West was, and I said Calgary. You're asking me who the favorite maybe in the East is, and I'll say Tampa. I could see a rematch of the 2004 Stanley Cup final.
What's interesting about Cooper, in my perspective, is we talked about Sutter and how his team pretty much molded his team to him as a player.
Mm-hmm.
I think Cooper molds himself to the group of players that they bring in for him. I don't know if he necessarily needs to go out and get guys to fit his system. I think he, just like you said, he knows how to motivate them, and he adjusts himself to what's needed to be successful. And that's a great coach too, right there.
Oh, that's a great point, Mark. I think, I really think John Cooper's EQ is off the charts, right? And anyone who's a parent or a teacher, in your case, like, that's what's so important, right? You walk into that classroom, and it's not just about teaching X's and O's. It's about, staring out to your class and saying, okay, this person might be going through something, and that person might not understand something. And how can I help them relate so that they can get the most out of what I'm trying to do here?
Right.
And John Cooper is brilliant at that. He understands people, right? Which is maybe more important than his hockey IQ is his intellectual EQ. And I think he resonates and knows how to get the most out of guys and put them in a position to succeed. I can't say enough good things about him, and I'm glad he's had the success, because now I think we're seeing a different group of GMs and coaches get opportunities that maybe in the previous, iteration of the NHL wouldn't have had those opportunities, because it's just like, well, we need the hardcore hockey guy, and those guys can certainly be effective, right? Like Daryl Sutter is an old school hockey guy, but he can still be effective. But it's nice that they can bring in a guy who doesn't have a formal NHL background. John Cooper was a lawyer, right? But he understands people, and it's exceptional what he's been able to do with that Tampa team.
You know what he did? I watched him do this, and I knew what he was doing. You talk about him using his psyche with teams. He knew that Penguins team, like you said, is, they're a little unique. No matter who he's throwing out there, they know how to win. And the last time the Penguins played Tampa, the Penguins ended up beating them, and he was inside his players' heads. I've read a couple of articles about what he said post-game, and he just kind of laid the groundwork like, okay, if we have to play this team again down the road, I'm going to go back to this, and this is what I'm going to work off of to make sure that I get my guys ready to go. So,
yeah, he's a great in-game coach. He makes great adjustments, and I think he has a feel for his team. I think some coaches aren't as tuned in to like who to ride at what time, and listen, a lot of coaches, if they were watching this, would say, well, that's easy. He's got Kucherov and Stamkos and Point. And I get it. He's got great players, right? You're not going to find a great coach who doesn't have great players, but I also think he knows how to get the most out of them. And
doesn't Edmonton have great players? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like that, this is my point. They have great players. We went through a whole handful of them. It's all on how you handle them. And I 100%, we're on the same page there. There's no doubt about it. Hey, why should I believe Toronto is going to get out of the first round? Besides the fact that's your squad, and I like them as well. Why should we believe that this year?
I don't know. I don't even think we can make a great statement, because I feel like it's, talk is cheap. Like, it's time for them to walk the walk. And I'm not sure they're going to get through the first round. And that's a shame for them, simply because I think they've shown they're a very good team. Yeah. But like I said about Florida, like, good God, they're I'm not sure exactly when this is going to air, but they could be staring down Tampa, Boston, Florida, maybe in the first round, probably Tampa or Boston. And they're going to go in as the underdog, simply because Boston's beaten them twice in the last 5 years. Yeah. And they still have their nucleus. Pardon me. And Tampa's the two-time defending Stanley Cup champion. And quite frankly, the other reason they'll go in as the underdog is because they've lost 5 straight first-round playoff games, 4 of them in elimination fashion, 1-game elimination fashion. Yeah. So the trust level is low. And all season, the narrative here in Toronto has been, show me. Like, we don't want to talk about, Matthews wins the Rocket Richard and Marner's this great player and Nylander, and no one wants to hear any of that. Like, what they want to do is say, okay, that's great. You have these incredibly talented players. They need to win a playoff round. So The selling point of them winning it is essentially they have a ton of skill. They certainly have the desire. It's not a lack of trying. Like when people say, oh, the Leafs, they're not trying. Of course they're trying. But, I think some of it is, they better get the team psychologists ready. God forbid they lose game one of the playoffs. People are going to be losing their minds in this market, right? Like, oh, here we go again. And it's unfortunate that they have to essentially exercise the demons of not just the last 5 years, but really the last 54 years, right? But it's been a long time. It's been since 2004 that the Leafs have won a first playoff round. That has nothing to do with the current group because they only can talk about this last little run. It's going to be very difficult. If Jack Campbell can play up to the level, it doesn't have to be the all-star Jack Campbell we saw in the first 3 months, but he certainly can't be the Jack Campbell we saw at the latter stages before he got injured and he's just coming back from a rib injury. If he could be a good above average goaltender, like I mentioned with the Edmonton Oilers, I think they have a legitimate chance. The Giordano addition is big, right? Because Mark, if you look at their blue line now, one thing I'll say is they were overly reliant on Jake Muzzin to sort of be that shutdown defender, right? And he unfortunately got injured the last two playoffs. He didn't finish the rounds with them. But now you have Muzzin, Brody, Riley, Giordano. That's a formidable top four. They added Lyubushkin, who also does not even go into the offensive zone. He basically sits back at his own blue line. He's very comfortable.
He's very tough.
Hits hard. He plays hard. So they've changed the look and complexion of their blue line. It's maybe less skilled because they don't have the Jake Gardners and the Tyson Berries, but it's more playoff ready for what they need. And I think that's a reason why they might have greater success. The blue line's shoring up a bit. They're not going to have guys just roaming around their goalie and causing trouble. So if they can keep the puck out of their net, kind of like Edmonton, the Leafs have a legitimate chance.
Yeah. Let's flip it over the Metro a little bit then. And Carolina's almost been from drop of the puck to where we are right now as the top team. What makes them unique? I know we talked about waves of talent and things like that, but they're a rather odd team to watch because, there's nobody that really, Stahl's been around. He's won a cup. He kind of gets what he needs to do, but that was a long time ago. Mm-hmm. Sebastian Aho, terrific offensive guy. What makes them so unique though? They don't really, Skinner is another guy,
They grind you. They grind you. They skate you into the ground and grind you out. And they do have a lot of talented player. There's two question marks I have. One, I would have liked them to have added some toughness, and it didn't have to be some big, fighter, but just someone who's tougher, a little. It would have helped, I think, because I remember watching them in a game. I think it was in February against Florida, and Florida just did what they wanted when they wanted. Hornquist was running around hitting everyone and no one had a real answer. And I'm not saying they're not they have guys who are very willing to engage.
Sure.
But I really wish they had added, Nicholas Deslauriers went for a 3rd round pick. That would have been a great addition, in my opinion. A guy who can kill penalties, a guy who's absolutely unafraid, is not a liability on the ice and can watch over if someone takes liberties with Aho or Svechnikov or whomever. And the second question, so the toughness is a question mark to me. And then the second thing I'm questioning is Freddie Anderson, who might win the Vezina Trophy, right? As we're doing this, he leads the league in goals against and he's had a formidable year by all accounts. But I've seen this before here in Toronto. He's been exceptional. And then get playoff time, he does let in a goal here or there. It wasn't easy. He had to go up against Tuukka Rask. He had to go up against the likes of Braden Holtby. I mean, he had to go up against some very good goaltenders, but he was on the short end of the stick in the playoffs. And I'm just wondering, how's he going to fare if he has to go up against Shesterkin, if he has to go up against Tristan Jarry, if he has to go up against Vasilevsky, Bobrovsky. There's a lot of really solid goaltenders. Every team who makes the playoffs and it's going to have it. And I was wondering, is he going to be able to win these head-to-head battles? And if they can answer those questions, and those are two big questions, I think they'll be fine. But I do wonder about overall team toughness to grind out, 2, 3, 4 playoff rounds. I really wonder if they have that, because they're a beautiful team to watch. They're exceptionally skilled. They have a great coach. They're very deep, but I'm wondering in a 7-game, we saw what that Tampa Florida series was like last year. My God, that was an absolute battle. Can they survive a series like that? And I guess we're going to find out. And I'm just not sure. I'm just not sure.
They're pretty resilient, though. I will
Yes.
tell you, watching them enough that I think they're a pretty resilient squad. And yeah, but Anderson's 40 years old. Am I correct?
No, he's not. He's not that old. He's probably 35, I guess.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
It feels like he's been
34
around
maybe?
forever. It just feels like
Well,
he
he started young in Anaheim. You're right, but no, he's definitely not 40. I mean, Craig Anderson is 40.
okay.
But Freddie Anderson's. I don't have it on me, but my guess is 34, maybe
Okay.
33.
I still feel like he's been around forever. Honestly, it just feels that way.
He's had a good career.
Is Gallant going to help to push? I know we talked about Gallant already. Is he going to help to push? Is he going to help to push the Rangers forward? Because they're another, that squad has got that right. I feel like they've got the right mix of youth, veterans, and veteran leadership. And Shesterkin, man, talk about the guy.
Yeah, they're an interesting team. I think they rely a little too heavy on Shesterkin, quite frankly. I think that he has saved them in some games that they would have lost. And sometimes there's a bit of smoke and mirrors involved there. It's like, well, Rangers won 3-1. Wow, they must be a great team. And then if you kind of, you look at the highlights, you don't really see the whole picture. And that's Shesterkin making a bunch of 5-alarm saves and going, wow, it could have been 6-3 against them. That's happened a lot. That's been one of the large storylines here. That's why a lot of people are considering him one of the favorites to win the Hart. His play has slipped a little bit of late, and their results have slipped a little bit of late. So I like the makeup of their team. I think often we see this, teams have to lose before they win, right? We have to get over that hump. We saw it with Washington, all those disappointments. Oh, they'll never win. And then suddenly, wow, okay, they found a way to figure it out. Maybe we're going to see that with the Maple Leafs. I don't know. Maybe we're going to see that with Colorado, who've had this bad spell 3 straight years in the second round. I'm not sure this group collectively has had to deal with that yet, right? Like,
they're still
everything
young.
has been great. Yeah, like 2 years ago, they were declaring, all right, we're rebuilding. And then, some good lottery balls fall their way and some player development goes a little quicker than usual. And Adam Fox was an incredible deal for them.
Yeah, wow.
And it accelerated things. So I'm just not sure. Listen, if they're probably going to match up against Pittsburgh, if you're asking me to put money down, I'm going to take Pittsburgh, a team with Crosby, Malkin, Letang, and guys who've been there, done that, over a team that, and I love, if we're going to rattle off, the Panarins and the Zibanejads and Kreider's having a career here, et cetera. I like the makeup of their team, but I think this could be one of those times where it's like, oh, wow. So the playoffs, and this is what a series is like against, a world-class team and guys who've done it before. So I'm putting them down a little bit as a tier down, just because I think in 2 years, the Rangers might be the best team in the NHL.
They might be incredible.
They might be if they continue on this pace. But right now, I think there'll still be like, okay, we're going to lose a little bit and learn how to win.
Kreider has what, 40, 41? How many does he have?
44, I believe.
44?
45. He's third in the league right now. As it stands right now, he's at 44 or 45, and Matthews at 51, Draisaitl at 50. So, yeah, he's been exceptional.
That's insane to think about Chris Kreider having that many goals. To be honest with you. I don't see him as that kind of player, but you're right. Like, that's that veteran leadership that they need, though. Hopefully they can keep him around to lead them into that next step.
I mean, they're a really interesting team to keep an eye on. And listen, would Shesterkin be the first goalie to kind of lead a team out of nowhere? I mean, we saw it with Carey Price last year, right? Without Carey Price, Montreal's not getting to the Stanley Cup final. So anything can happen, and that would be really fearful when teams are game planning for going up against the Rangers come playoff time. They're going to be like, oh God, we got to deal with Shesterkin for the next 4 to 7 games. This is not going to be easy. But I am, I still just think there's the growing pains inevitably. And it's not that they're a young, immature team, but it's just this collective group hasn't been together to get into the trenches. So I'm interested to see how they do.
How many, you probably know this. I should have done my research on this. How many games has Shesterkin played this year?
Ooh, I don't know that. I know he had a week ago, he had a 934 save percentage, which would just like Marc-Andre Fleury won the Vezina last year, I think, with a 918, right? And he's at 930, or he was at 934. I think it's dropped maybe into the 20s now. So, I mean, that's how good he's been. Georgiev hasn't played an exceptional amount. And I'm sure they're going to be playing Shesterkin down the stretch because they probably want to have home ice advantage. So we're going to see a lot of them. Are you wondering about fatigue?
Yeah.
And that's a question for a few teams. We were asking that on Saturday on Hockey Night in Canada. Elliot Friedman was saying, with Calgary, we're talking about them. They've lost a few in a row, and said, I wonder if Markstrom needs a little bit of a rest. We're seeing that a few teams. That's why Minnesota could be that sleeper team. They've got 1A and 1B in Fleury and Talbot.
Yeah.
And they're able to kind of go back and forth. They don't lose much. Either guy they put in there, the team's very comfortable around either of them. I mean, I say going into the playoffs, that's probably the best tandem you have. And I know you'd rather, have one superstar and you can just, like, Vasilevsky will play every minute. But if you're not going to have a Vasilevsky, to have a Fleury Talbot tandem isn't damn bad.
Yeah, no, not at all. Fleury cracks me up. I know the Capitals are putting a push on for him, and he's like, I don't really want to go there. I'm good with it, which, I mean, that's his choice. He's been around long enough.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a knock on Washington. I think maybe he's just, his heart was in Pittsburgh for so long. The idea of staring down and it's like, Sid and Malkin on the other end in a 7-game series and going, oh man. And, maybe if you had the choice between Minnesota and Washington, he looked at the two teams and sort of said, I'm 37 years old. I have a better shot to win a cup with this group over here as opposed to that group over there. So it's interesting though that, I mean, I'm sure there was more suitors than just Washington and Minnesota.
No, yeah, absolutely. I'm surprised Pittsburgh didn't take a sniff there, but I know their cap's tight. Hey, let's talk about Old Faithful, Penguins and Caps. Which one of those teams can get out of that first round from that perspective? Because I know Pittsburgh, we talked about them, but the Caps have been struggling. They just got scorched last night by Minnesota. We're talking here, it's April 4th, and they got scorched last night, April 3rd, 5-1? They just haven't looked like the Caps. They just haven't.
Yeah, they really haven't. I don't know. There's something just seems off a little bit about that team right now. I think they're going to go in as the prohibitive favorite. They're going to finish 4th in that division. So they're going to play either Florida or Carolina most likely. And I think their work's going to be cut out. And it's funny when I've heard other people talk about the East, they sort of say, oh, there's 5 or 6 Stanley Cup contenders and Washington isn't on their list. And I think that's fair at this point. The goaltending's been an issue, and they've had a series of injuries, right? Backstrom missed the first half of the year, and Oshie's been in and out of the lineup. And, it's asking a lot of a veteran group to grind it out the way they've had to grind out this year to see where they're going to end up. Carlson's been banged up a little bit too. So I like their team. I mean, they're an exceptional team, and can they turn it on and win a series? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But they're not going to go in as the favorite at all in the East. I imagine every series they're going to have, even if they win the first round, they'll go into the second round as the underdog again, I would imagine, just because I think it's so top heavy in the East right now.
I don't feel like Kuzi's been the same guy he was when Backstrom was out, though. Like, he's kind of
hot and cold.
Yeah.
And you want guys to be consistent. And he when he's hot, he is extraordinarily hot, but the cold spells sometimes do kick in.
All right. Pivotal players. Give me 3 pivotal players from the West and from the East that you think will change the dynamic of what may happen in the playoffs.
Well, when it comes to, the playoffs, it's always goaltending. So I'll put Jacob Markstrom's name on there. Calgary will need that exceptional goaltending. If Vegas gets in, clearly Robin Lehner has to be exceptional. He can't just be okay. They have a little bit less firepower consistently scoring wise than Calgary or Colorado for that matter. On Colorado, if Cale Makar can keep playing up to this level, he controls the ice, he controls the game. Similar to Roman Josi. Those are guys that control the ice. I'm naming goalies in defense, which is funny because there's so many good offensive players. But really, when push comes to shove, and you don't have to look any further than Tampa, it came down to Vasilevsky and Hedman. When Hedman's on the ice, he controls the pace of play. Vasilevsky makes all the big saves.
Right.
If you get those two things happening, you're going to have great success. And especially when you're running a guy like Hedman out there for 27 minutes a night. And you can do that with Makar. You can do that, certain teams have that ability, the Petrangelos, the Yosis, et cetera. Those are the guys that are the difference makers, whether it's the East or the West. It really, the same thing holds true. So those are the guys I'll be keeping an eye on.
Okay. Who do you see coming out of the East and West? And I know we talked about this. We talked about a bunch of different scenarios. Who do you see coming out of either one of those, and who might be your winner?
Well, I'll preface this, Mark, by saying I suck at this. I just want you to know, don't go and lay money down based on what I'm about to say. But again, and I said it earlier, I could see a Calgary, Tampa, 2004 rematch of the Stanley Cup final. Listen, you could slot in Florida, and you can slot in Toronto, and you can slot in Pittsburgh, and you can slot in Colorado. Like, there's a bunch of different things, and I wouldn't be like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. But right now, if you're asking me, and again, it's early April, just to be clear, because I know this isn't going to play maybe till May, but this is early April. And right now, Calgary, to me, I don't see any weaknesses. If they're healthy going into the playoffs, I love that team. And Tampa, like, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. And, for all those doubters, they've proven us all wrong. And I actually have liked Tampa very much the last few years. Why would we bet against them? I just, they have all the makeup of a championship pedigree team. Right. And I'm not betting against them until someone knocks them off. So I'm going to stick to Tampa. I'm going to stick to Calgary and say, if we get a final like we got in 2004, which went to 7 games, which was unbelievable, I'm not going to argue with that.
Well, we know what to expect with Tampa. There's no doubt about it. And they know what to expect when they step on the ice. Hey, final segment. We just got to know your favorite places to go to and be part of their hockey action there, whether it's just watching the game, whether it's, reporting on the game, whatever. Your favorite places.
Well, one of my career highlights, Mark, last year, and it was under weird circumstances where, the pandemic was still kind of rearing its head.
Yeah.
And, it wasn't exactly how it would have been under normal circumstances, but going to Montreal, for anyone who hasn't gone to Montreal to experience what an NHL experience is like there, get some tickets Saturday night. The fans are smart. They're sophisticated. The surrounding area, it's right downtown Montreal. There's a ton of restaurants and clubs and bars and lounges and great hotels, within a mile of the Bell Center. The in-house entertainment, whether it's the music or whether, they have the organ, whether it's the anthem singer, people are dressed to the nines. It's date night. It's, it's guys on bachelor parties. It's got everything together. It's a very fun hockey environment. Vegas for a new destination is a lot of fun. I've been there mostly at the Stanley Cup final in 2018, but I really thought they did a great job, the in-arena presentation, and, it has all the pageantry and glitz and glamour you'd expect in Las Vegas. So that's a fun destination. There's so many good spots though. Those two come to mind. Nashville's a lot of fun. The crowd gets very into it. You feel like you're at an event. And again, you walk out of Bridgestone Arena and you go to Broadway. And if you are into, country music and you want to go get crazy with your friends at whatever bars, there are many options there. So that's always a fun place and a fun destination. There's so many I enjoy though. Los Angeles, granted, it's been at playoff time mostly. I've been there to cover games, but I think they do a great job as well. I'm sure that building will be rocking come playoff time again this year. Those are to name a few. I'm trying to think of some more good ones. I like so many of them. I'm very interested. We won't see them in the playoffs this year, but I'm interested to get to the new arena in Seattle. I'm interested to get to the new arena on Long Island. I think those venues are supposed to be very good and viewer friendly, which is nice too. I think you get to a good place with rivalries. I'm naming a lot of places here, but like if you get to go see a Boston Montreal game in Boston, like that's fierce. Like, be careful, look around you because you don't know what's going to be happening around you. Brawls happening everywhere. I've seen some fun stuff in Boston when those two teams play. When the team's doing well, Vancouver's another fun spot. And I'd say Toronto. I've been to so many games in Toronto. In Toronto, come playoff time, they've got a lot of the sort of golf clappers during the regular season because the tickets are so incredibly expensive. But come playoff time, Toronto can hold its own. There's just a lot of history in that, with that team, with that franchise. And so there's no shortage of great places to go, quite frankly. But those are some of my favorites.
You just gave our audience a wide array of places to go check out, and they'll have to put it on their map so they make sure they do it, as well as myself. I have a 12-year-old son who plays hockey, and we try and travel around and see some hockey as well. It doesn't even have to be our favorite team. We just like hockey,
Right.
We just like hockey. David, it's been awesome. You taking the time out of your busy schedule, especially this time of year, you sitting down and talking with us. And like I said, this is going to air at the very beginning of the playoffs. So it'll be fun to follow along with what you said. It sounds like I'm going to have to stay up late night a lot though, and see some of the Calgary games. You've really got me fired up to watch them now.
They're a good team, Mark. Yeah. It's exciting. And just listen, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. And I'm glad we have great hockey fans like you around. North America and around the world. It makes the game, it's the fabric of the game, right? It's just so important.
I can't wait till it jumps to be number one instead of 1B in my book, because football's 1A, I guess. I don't know. Have a great day. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you, Mark.
Can't find anyone better with hockey knowledge than what we got today from David Amber. You can stay in touch with David by following him on Twitter at David Amber. Connect with us here on the Original Sports Podcast with Mark Maradei by checking out our website, apps, and much more. Our website is originalsportspodcast.com. Like our Facebook page, join our conversation on Twitter, and reach out to us on Snapchat. All of that is OSP with MM. And you can also follow us on Instagram, like our TikToks, and please subscribe to us on YouTube. All of that is Original Sports Podcast. Hey, feel free to let us know if you have any comments, questions, suggestions for potential guests by emailing us at originalsportspodcast@gmail.com. I'd like to thank our voice intro done by Matt Noble. I want to thank our intro and outro music done by Charlie Hodgson, our social media manager, Will Franciscus, and our webmaster, Terry Maradei. Join us each week to experience the O on the Original Sports Podcast.